Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
Well, happy Tuesday, one and all. This is O'Connor and Company on WMAL. I'm Andrew Langer, in for Larry O'Connor this week, sitting alongside Hans von Spakovsky. Good morning, Hans. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. And I think what are we? We're halfway through the morning, right?
Oh, listen, no, it's the morning's just beginning, Hans, because we got Chris Plant coming on. We got Vince, we got Derek later on. In fact, the morning goes well into the afternoons here on WMAL. So stay tuned all day for all of our programming here. It is 7:07. We are making sense of the news here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We got a great show coming up. The next hour, just added Justin Reamer. He's the CEO and president of Restoring Integrity and Trust in Elections. I referenced this story out of PG County. Out in the county, where they've been requesting the election records, the voter registration records of this school superintendent. Justin's going to join us to talk about this. Then, of course, we've got Schlepp, the gamer who was kicked off Roblox for daring to expose child predators on the platform. He's joining us along with his lawyer, Stephen Vanderporten. But joining us right now because this is such an important story. Zack Smith from the Heritage Foundation. Zack, I mean, we weren't surprised. We'd had a conversation with Joe DeGeneva. He sort of laid it out for us that the dismissing of these indictments against Letitia James and James Comey were going to happen. They happened without prejudice. Break us down for what happened yesterday and what it means. Zack Smith, by the way, he's a former assistant U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Florida, currently senior legal fellow and manager of the Supreme Court and Appellate Advocacy Program at the Heritage Foundation's Meese Center.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show this morning.
Always.
So, look, I think many people weren't surprised by the ruling yesterday. It was a judge from South Carolina who's sitting by special designation in the Eastern District of Virginia. And the judge said essentially that Lindsey Halligan, the U.S. attorney that Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, had appointed to that position, that she had been improperly appointed. And as a result, the indictments of James Comey and Letitia James were invalid. Wow. And the judge dismissed them without prejudice. Now, because the judge dismissed those indictments without prejudice, that means that the Justice Department can re-indict both Comey and James. Now, there's going to be some legal wrangling, particularly when it comes to James Comey. He's arguing that the statute of limitations has already expired, that it's too late for the government to try to re-indict him. There's a statute that seems to allow the government up to 6 months to try to re-indict him. But look, at the end of the day, this is not the end of the road for either James Comey or Letitia James. There's a lot more to come in both of these cases. But for now, at least, both of those indictments have been dismissed.
Hans, you want to jump in here? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Zach, the problem here is, right, that the Senate has not confirmed a U.S. attorney for this slot, and that's why we've had these temporary acting AGs there. Is the solution to this, if they can't get a U.S. attorney confirmed to do this, to do a re-indictment, can they detail, for example, a U.S. attorney who's been confirmed from another district? Can he come to Virginia and do this?
Potentially, but I'm so glad you brought up this point, Hans, because it's so important. The entire reason we're in this situation is because of Democratic obstruction of President Trump's preferred picks to be U.S. attorneys. And this isn't an issue just in the Eastern District of Virginia. It's an issue around the country where Democratic senators are essentially blocking President Trump's nominees. Now, you may have heard about the blue slip being in the news lately. That's not in law anywhere. It's just a Senate tradition where essentially if a home state senator refuses to sign off on a presidential nominee, refuses to return the blue slip for that nominee, then other senators, as a courtesy, will essentially refuse to advance that nominee forward. And what we're seeing Democratic senators do now in unprecedented numbers is refusing to turn the blue slip on the president's nominees. And that's particularly true in states that have two Democratic senators, like Virginia, like New York, like California. I suspect what's going to happen in this case, Hans, you ask about who could the DOJ bring in to prosecute these cases. We've seen a similar maneuver in California where essentially Pam Bondi could appoint Lindsey Halligan to be the first assistant, the chief deputy in the office. And then because there would be a vacancy at the U.S. attorney level, Lindsey Halligan could become the acting U.S. attorney under a different statutory authority. So essentially, she would be the acting U.S. attorney instead of the interim U.S. attorney. That workaround has been used in Los Angeles, and we may see something similar here.
Yeah, our guest is Zack Smith. He's a former assistant U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Florida. And let's look at Florida, because one of the things that came up with Joe DeGeneva was the issue of the investigation into the widespread conspiracy against President Trump, during his first term. And that investigation, I mean, Zach, this may be a blessing in disguise because it was dismissed without prejudice. It gives the opportunity there. I mean, obviously, the Letitia James case is something separate here. But in terms of what was going on within the federal government, those investigations that are happening down in Florida, that's serious stuff. And maybe we should sort of let that play out, shouldn't we?
Yeah, it's absolutely serious stuff. I think it is going to play out. Keep in mind some of the advantages of the investigations taking place in Florida, other places, is that there are confirmed U.S. attorneys in place because Florida, for example, has 2 Republican senators. And so they signed off on President Trump's nominees. So all of the districts in Florida have confirmed U.S. attorneys in place. And I think it just highlights the importance of a president being able to get his preferred picks in place to serve as U.S. attorneys, to serve as U.S. district court judges, to serve as U.S. marshals. And yet that is not happening in so many places around the country today.
Hans, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I'm just going back to the Senate and the fact that Senator Thune is upholding the blue slip process and letting Democratic senators block U.S. attorneys from getting confirmed. And look, the U.S. attorneys are the workhorses of criminal prosecutions across the country. And when they're not in those positions, it's very hard to get tough on crime. I mean, Kash Patel is doing a great job at the FBI, but the FBI does the investigations. They then have to hand their files over to the Justice Department to prosecute. And if there's no U.S. attorneys there, they can't do that.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right, Hans. I think it is a crisis-level issue right now. I think this is why you're seeing the president really leaning in to calling for the blue slip process to be abolished because of his frustration over issues just like this. And we're seeing this, again, play out across the country. And so this not only has implications for Letitia James and James Comey's case, but this has implications for cases brought against drug dealers, gang members, child predators. So these are very real, very important issues, and I hope the Senate can resolve this very quickly.
Well, listen, Zach, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me on the show.